power in the verse can stop me.
What's going on, guys? My name is Aldeniro, and welcome to the Midnight Hour, our fortnightly podcast coming at you for the second time in a week. Is that correct? Second time in 7 days or something like that?
It might just be.
Yeah, but we're breaking the fortnightly tradition to bring you a special episode on April Fool's Day for the day that's in it, because it can be really hard to come up with topics for podcasts, especially when you've been doing it for 2 years. But when a day is handed to you, like April Fool's Day, and it falls on a Friday, it's perfect, because we can talk about times where people have been fooled. Like, there have been numerous April Fool's Day gimmicks that have caught loads of people out and stuff like that. Like, you know, the Google thing where they said this makes your phone emit a certain scent when you download this app. Things like that. Sort of harmless gags in which everybody falls for it, so everybody's an idiot. That kind of thing. So I hope you've celebrated April Fool's Day with your family and had the big April Fool's Day Christmas ham, like we
the rum ham of April Fool's Day.
Yeah, the famous cuisine specific to the month of April.
And, you know, perpetrated some harmless pranks.
Yes.
Not social experiments, but harmless pranks in which nobody is in danger of dying.
I've actually come up with a really, really good idea for a prank, bro. And
really? Bro.
I don't know if I should give it away, because it's actually really good. And it would get mad views, and people would love it.
Would they love it, or...?
I think so, because I think it targets one of the most hated sections of those types of videos. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that Roman Atwood video where he goes up to a guy. There's a guy with like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, and Roman Atwood starts pouring water on it, and the guy goes fucking crazy at him, and he's like, "The fuck are you doing, bro?" And Roman Atwood is like, "It's water, dude." And he's like, "I don't give a fuck. You don't touch my car. Don't you know who I am?" And stuff like that. And he was probably paid.
Yeah,
to do that.
The good old Ronnie Pickering approach.
Yeah.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
I'm Ronnie fucking Pickering.
Ronnie Pickering.
Yeah, that poor woman looks like she was just sick of his shit.
Yeah, she had to put up with a lifetime of that. But
shall we get on with the actual topic at hand?
Let's experience some hoaxes. One of the, if you don't know what a hoax is, I'll give you an example of something that is an epic hoax that a lot of people still believe in. And we're going to be talking about hoaxes that have kind of helped shape the world a little bit. Like, everybody knows the story of the War of the Worlds. It's this epic thing that was created, like one of the first alien sci-fi type things, and it really captivated people. It was incredible. But when War of the Worlds was first broadcast on radio, people thought it was real. They thought it was a real news broadcast. They started freaking out. They went outside and started taking a jackhammer to the floor and smashing people's windscreens and packing up their cars and driving away. And it sent everyone into a massive frenzy. However, that is a hoax. That did not happen. People heard War of the Worlds for the first time on the radio, and they thought, this is a really neat show. I'm going to listen to this some more.
They were fully aware of what, you know, the story was.
The whole notion that it was something that people freaked out about was created by news media, because they were threatened by radio media, and they wanted to be like, look, this is proof that the radio is evil.
Dangerous.
Yeah. They're piping evil into people's homes, much like the internet of today. I just want to mention, this is a shorter episode than usual because it's essentially a bonus episode. It's in the middle between 2 weeks where we're scheduled to have episodes, so this is really just for you. Like, this is, just a thing that we're doing. Anyways, tell us your first hoax.
Yes, right. So everybody who is aware of Italy and aware of Pisa is aware of the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Yes. Famously photographed next to a person
holding up an arm for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I don't get why that's a thing, specifically with the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Why don't they do that with all buildings?
Because with other buildings they can't look like they're holding it up or pushing it over or pretending it's their penis.
Oh, people. You so crazy.
But the reason that the Leaning Tower of Pisa is so famous worldwide, name me a more famous tower and you honestly probably couldn't.
What about the Eiffel Tower?
Well,
What about the Leaning Eiffel Tower?
of Pisa.
Yeah.
But but so it was built, ages ago. Like it was built in like the 1300s or the 1400s, and it wasn't really a thing of prominence until in the middle of World War Two. And everyone should know this, that Italy kind of switched sides.
Yeah, famous.
As it were, yeah. So in I can't remember when they switched sides. It was 1940 something, obviously.
1949. It was a really late turn. The war had ended, and they were like, you know what?
Yeah. In the 1950s, they were late to the party. But so when they turned away from the kind of the Allies distributed kind of this propaganda against the Italians and cited the Leaning Tower of Pisa and its kind of angle and the angle that it leaned at as the kind of like limp-wristed hand of like it like there was a lot of digs in the propaganda, insinuating that this was a symbol of their kind of homosexuality and their kind of impotence.
Yeah.
Kind of in terms of their military and their governmental power. So the Allies spread this worldwide, and that obviously I suppose this isn't even really a hoax, but it is kind of it's kind of something that has led to it being that famous. It's really changed the world because now everybody knows what the Leaning Tower of Pisa is.
Yeah, like before that, it was just something.
It was just a tower in Italy.
Yeah, like it wasn't something that had any kind of acclaim worldwide, and certainly not like a tourist attraction or anything like that. I mean, it was akin to like you walking into your local park and seeing a monument. It was akin to walking through Leicester City and seeing the clock tower.
Yeah, or the statue to Jamie Vardy.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
There's a statue of Gandhi in Leicester. Just thought everyone should know. No, I have a joke with my friend Christian, though, about how this jokes with my friend Christian come true, like the joke we had about Leicester winning the league. But we have a joke about, like, in Leicester, everyone meets at the clock tower. It's just a fucking clock tower, really, really, like, modest-looking tower that is very small and stuff like that. And it's just such a nothing monument. But everyone meets at it, and it just is what it is. And that's what the Leaning Tower of Pisa was before it became a symbol of like Italy's impotence. Some nice alliteration. I like that. I'm a fan.
It really is.
But yeah, like I guess like there's a lot of stuff as well that comes from just war propaganda that kind of helped to shape the world like in ways that a lot of people don't think. I have a story about a discovery that pretty much did change the world. It led us to find one of the most well-known heat sources available to people in the late 1700s and 1800s. It's about the discovery of coal. Now, the Chinese discovered coal, I mean, in BC. The Chinese famously transported coal and used coal to their advantage and stuff like that. This is more about the discovery of coal in the Western world and specifically in America. Some 200 years after Columbus pretended that he discovered America because he's a fucking idiot. Coal was discovered in America by accident, and it was in the late 1600s, around 1670, around that year. There was a French writer who was stationed in Virginia with a team of explorers, and they were working their way through America and, detailing what they found and documenting things to send them back to France to say, what they found that was useful and what they found that wasn't, and just things like that. But they sent a writer with them. His name was Martin Masson. He was published a few times, but nothing particularly amazing. It was relatively easy to get published back then if you had the contacts, and he came from a really rich family. His father was a famous, gunpowder sort of warlord type guy, but he wanted his son to have a more respected profession, and he wanted him to be successful in a respected profession. Like, he was quite ashamed of what gunpowder had done to the world, like particularly in the French Revolution and things like that, which hadn't happened yet, but it was definitely on its way, and there was growing tensions in France, and that just led his father to have some kind of spiritual awakening, and that was why he thought Martin would be safer away from the revolution, and he thought that he would be able to hone his craft and become inspired by going to a whole new land, which, like, if you can imagine what it would be like to go to America in the 1600s compared to now, like, you know, it's completely different. But the pressure of trying to impress his father got to Martin, and he started writing fake news articles, much like what we talked about in the Cynical Myths episode. One in particular, though, went viral, or the 1600s equivalent to viral, which was a story about gigantic skulls being excavated by locals in Richmond, Virginia. Martin drew like detailed depictions of the skulls, and the pictures were sent back overseas to the King of France directly, because this was seen as a huge deal. The French were trying to get together their own gunpowder and resources to quell the uprising that was threatening to occur in their country. So they were cynical enough to believe that if they could get the gigantic skulled species on their side, that they'd be able to, you know, win the war and like calm tensions and become this sort of superpower. So the king decided to dispatch like this expert excavation team to America to find as much information as possible on everything that was happening over there and on his would-be giant-headed warriors. But anyway, they went to Richmond and they dug for 3 weeks straight. They didn't find anything. Eventually, they stumbled upon coal. The news went back to France about the skull. Like, obviously it was all uncovered that they were completely faked. There was no locals that had dug anywhere in Richmond, Virginia. Like, they'd even covered the entire state of, well, I suppose it wasn't a state back then, but the land around Virginia. They didn't find anything to do with any skulls. It was found to be a complete hoax. Martin ended up admitting it was a hoax, and the way that the King of France was portrayed as just such a laughingstock for being fooled by what was an obvious hoax, it led to him being overthrown and hanged. So, like, and when Martin was eventually sent back to France, he was abolished from his family because his dad had lost a huge, like, stronghold with, obviously the gunpowder game was pretty much owned by the French government, who had been overthrown. So his dad wasn't really anything anymore. Martin had completely blew his chance at success, and he was abolished. It's suspected that he became a journalist in Spain under a different name after, but no one really knows if that was true or not, because he just had a huge capacity for fiction. But obviously the coal they discovered was a huge achievement, and it heated homes and powered steam engines and burned a huge fucking hole in our atmosphere for several years.
Yeah. So he both, you know, saved and ruined.
Yeah.
Well, he did more ruining than he did anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the French people will thank him for that one, like, crazy hoax that he came up with that ended up, like, saving them from starvation and things like that. So, that's a crazy story. I don't really know why it's not talked about more.
No, like, you know, you'd think that the, you know, real origin of kind of finding, you know, this ridiculous, like, it was truly like an unprecedented amount of coal that they found.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd think that this was kind of the first. I don't know how you'd describe it. Kind of this almost like the first, like, really mineral rich, if you want to call coal a mineral.
Yeah.
I just can't think of a better phrase to describe it. Resources rich, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. This kind of, you know, this huge, almost this state-sized bit of land. Yeah. Over in the US that they were able to almost freely exploit with, you know, almost no kind of, you know, resistance at all.
Yeah, it's like, it's deeply sad that it ruined a family when, had he just, you know, instead of, like, detailing these stupid things of skull, like, had he just hung out for a little bit longer, they would have probably discovered the coal anyway. Yeah. And, like, that would have been a much greater success to his father, because it would have gotten him a huge in with the French government. Like, had they learned about this resource that they could hone and use for their own, like, benefit and things like that. And it's just the pressure of trying to impress his father was so much so that it led to him completely sabotaging everything and leading to, like, a fucking huge revolution in France. And, like, just it's just a massive oversight on his part, to be honest.
And a massive oversight on all of history, because I can guarantee that no one would have heard about this in their history classes.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and like you can Google Martin Masson, and like you'll see pictures of him. You'll read all about it and stuff like that. It's just a much more interesting story than what we learned in school.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also, I mean, this next one that I've got this next hoax is also something that I'm absolutely just so surprised at whenever I tell people. And nobody's ever heard of it. No one, and it's to do with Big Ben. Everyone knows the tower. Again, another tower-based one, because apparently, or I am fascinated by both hoaxes and towers.
I would love it so much if you opened this one by being like, Big Ben, it's an iconic tower. Name me a more famous tower. You probably can't.
You probably can't. Not in France or Italy. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you hadn't been taught it. But being English, and especially living in London, where I can get a train and within 10, 15 minutes I can be standing next to it, and no one's been told this. So everyone knows that Big Ben is the name of the bell.
Yeah,
and
it's not
it's actually the Elizabeth Tower.
It's actually called Frankenstein's Tower.
It's actually called the London Tower of Pisa. Wait, but so April Fool's Day dates back, God knows how long. But in the Elizabeth Tower and the bell Big Ben was put into it in 1859, so it was all completed then. And it was actually right around the time of April 1st. I think it was something like March 29th they finished it. So they ran a news story shortly after on April 1st saying, proclaiming that, they've put in Big Ben, the bell, but they didn't name it as the Elizabeth Tower. They named it after the architect, whose name was actually Richard.
Oh.
And this is like genuinely, and everyone knows, for those of you who don't know, anyone that's been watching The Night Manager recently will have known that the nickname for people called Richard is Dick.
Yes.
And they ran a tongue-in-cheek, this kind of satire article in like front page, like with no kind of hint that it was an April Fool's Day joke, saying that the architect has the architect Richard, like saying his nickname was Dickie, and that they were naming the tower after him, and that they were naming it Dickie Tower.
Oh God!
In the middle of London, can you believe it? Like next to the Houses of Parliament, they were naming it Dickie Tower, and there was uproar. There was absolutely massive uproar, and people absolutely demanded outright. Like they were absolutely fuming. You can't have this massive erect edifice called Dickie in the middle of London. Would become a mockery. So people demanded, and the government was kind of like, shit. Look, and they kind of just had to concede, because there was just this mass public outcry, and from then on, it's just been known as Big Ben. And the fact that it's named the Elizabeth Tower has just completely fallen to the wayside due to this one practical joke.
When you DM'd me about this earlier, I looked it up, and like there was like rioting in the streets, and it's always the case where when white people riot over stuff, like it's because like, oh, we had to get obviously white people rioted because we needed more rights and stuff like that, but when black people riot, they're tearing homes apart and they're looting from like white people rioted in the street over a fucking thing being named after a genital organ. Like, it's not. It's just that was one thing that I took away from it. Anyway, was that like maybe that's part of the reason that no one talks about it, is because it's just such a ludicrous sort of stain on English history.
I know, but at the time, no one could bear to think that we'd have this, massive edifice as a. as a kind of, I can't even think of a better word than kind of just a statue to Dickie. It's such a ridiculous thing at the time.
I know.
So, do you have you said you had another one, didn't you?
Yeah,
Or
I was looking through sort of like I was looking for just hoaxes and stuff, and like everyone knows all the obvious ones. I wanted to talk a little more about the War of the Worlds one, but it's not really. It's sort of a thing that people just know, I think. But you always find with the way after a certain number of years they have to make classified documents public.
yeah,
And you always find that they time this really well because when they make classified stuff public, they pretty much there's a really well known tactic in law in called burying someone in paper, where people are like, I want to see the evidence of this, and the opposing legal team are like, okay, here's like all of the paper in our entire building.
yeah,
And governments do that too because they don't want you to sift through everything. Like there are things in there that they don't want to reveal and stuff like that. But there was a thing from like I think it was like 1982 in England where this sort of I don't there was a guy called Igor Mikhailson, I think was his name. How you pronounce it? He was a Swedish balloonist. He used to make hot air balloons, and his business was taking people on hot air balloon rides and sanctioning for couples to go, because that was a huge thing in the 80s, was going on hot air balloon rides and stuff like that. He'd moved to England. I think maybe his dad moved him to England or something like that, but he spoke with an English accent and everything like that. But he would always be checking on the weather to see what it was like on that day so that he could, see how high he could take the balloon, whatever. And he was listening to it. He uncovered this thing. There was like a strange sort of noise coming through the radio. It was musical in the same way that, like, say, a Nine Inch Nails song is musical. Like, sometimes noise is just musical, even when it's a sonically assaulting sound.
Even if it's a bit more ethereal than
ethereal. It's so funny you say the word ethereal, because he dubbed it the ethereal transmissions, and for years he was unable to actually pinpoint the source of this transmission, and he had no idea what it was. So he took it to the government, and he was like, okay, look, I don't know what this sound is, but it's something that I'm coming across when I'm trying to get weather reports from different sources so that I can run my balloon business. And the government were like, okay, we'll help you find out what it is, but we're going to need all of your equipment. So he complied. He was like, yeah, sure. Like, he was super interested in this. And the government took all of his equipment, and he basically never got it back. And he had to go and purchase all new equipment, which sort of ended up strangling his hold on the business. He sort of had to double down a little bit. He had to sacrifice a certain shift that he would use on a Wednesday to Friday or something like that. I forget all the details on it. But he discovered a new transmission this time, coming from a completely different source, which he dubbed the cipher sessions. And it's hard to describe what kind of sound it was. It was like not like a scratching sound, like maybe like a boulder rolling down a hill type noise. Very strange. And there would be like intermittent sort of splashing noises and things like that. And he had no idea what it was, sorry. And again, he took it to the government, and he was like, look, I know there's something weird going on. And this was at the exact same time that foot and mouth disease just happened to break out. And this was the reason that I don't know if anyone would remember the foot and mouth disease from 2002-ish.
I remember it, yeah.
Yeah, well, like, it was a huge deal.
Yeah,
everyone was terrified.
Deal, yeah.
It turned out to be nothing, but the reason that people were so scared about it was because the original one in the 80s was one where you could not even leave your home. Like, I think maybe like sanitation, just general cleanliness and things like that weren't as good at the time. But people couldn't leave their homes, so no one could leave their homes. And it just turned out to be this huge, like, pandemic panic. But there wasn't a single case of foot and mouth disease reported from any farmer or anything like that. So it was really, really strange. And it turns out that Igor Mikhailson died like a bankrupt sort of. I think he was like 46. He had nothing left. He couldn't like farm, or like he couldn't do anything to
Yeah.
make a living because the foot and mouth thing.
Yeah, he was one of the few cases where it was linked back. His death was linked back to the foot and mouth
the
epidemic in the
pandemic.
80s. Yeah.
Yeah, but it turned out that the British government had sort of just created this foot and mouth disease thing so that they could transport a sort of a strange, like, subhuman species, aquatic in its nature,
Yeah.
from one side of Britain to the other,
Yeah.
where they wouldn't be making this transmission, and they wouldn't get caught, and they wouldn't be detected. And they've since evaded capture, so no one really knows what happened. But the British government is responsible for the death of Igor Mikkelsen and the death of his balloon business. And they have never explained what the cipher sessions or the ethereal transmissions were. And we just sit here with no clue what the fuck is going on.
I can't anymore. It's every time you mention his fucking balloon business.
I had no idea when I started talking. That all just came to me. You said the word ethereal, and I was like, boom! Running with that.
His balloon business. I wanted to interject and add to something, but you're on such a roll, I didn't really want to interrupt.
I swear to God, I have nothing written down. That just
Jesus Christ, that was magical.
That came from the heart.
If anyone hasn't guessed by now, none of these are true.
Every single thing is made up.
These are all lies.
You know what I was gonna say though? Like the ones that we actually came up with before we started recording. Isn't it so interesting that the theme of all of them is male bravado?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Does that say something about us, or?
I don't know, but that's so fucking weird. Like,
oh, dear,
mine was about a guy who just was trying so hard to impress his father, and his father was a big fucking gun lord and stuff like that. And like, you know, he was so and like the King of France got so belittled for looking like an idiot, and like it's all male. That's so funny. I find like that's so weird.
I've just gone for a phallic edifice in the middle of London and Italy's impotence in the form of a tower.
Like, we didn't talk about this at all beforehand. We never at any point cross-referenced stories, or like, well, I mean, I made mine up 5 minutes before we actually had this call. But that's real. I think that's funny. Someone needs to do their own podcast just on a study as to how we came up with all of those stories.
I did do a little bit of research just to make sure I had some facts about when Big Ben was made and when the Tower of Pizza was made, and I wrote down that the Tower of Pizza is actually leaning south, as if at some point I could work that in to like some sundial-based Nazi drama. I have no idea what I was going for.
Mine is like completely true. To a point, coal was discovered in Richmond, Virginia, in 1679 by French explorers. So, like, I don't know. Mine, I don't know. Like I said before, mine has no point or purpose or anything. It's just a thing that I made up. Like,
the Big Ben one is literally part of a joke that I made up when I was like 13, 14, that, you know, they named Big Ben after the architect's brother, because they couldn't be having name it after Richard. Like,
fuck hell. This is the best.
Oh dear God. Oh dear more.
I think I don't know. I'd like to think we really did reel people in though at the start.
I hope so.
I think you should all comment on your general feelings about this episode. I think I want to read your reaction and stuff like that.
But no specific spoilers.
Yeah.
Keep it vague.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, don't say, "Oh my God, you had me," or just I think the Midnight Hour fans are so good for that, though. I
Yeah.
feel like the best like people in the world for being in on the joke while luring other people in on the joke. It's on my channel. It's just the best. But will we leave it there?
Yeah,
All
I think
right. See you guys next week.
so.
Happy April Fool's Day.
Peace.
All she cares about is money in the city where she's from. Her intention is the paper, she don't need no fucking love. She's spilling all this liquor, trying to pass me all these